hypnosis, especially when you're talking about pains that are problems that are painful, not so much painful as it hurts me, it's more of an internal hurt. The next one is language. It tends to come out as confusion. Sometimes when you ask certain questions to your clients, especially in the hypnotic interview, they get so confused about how to answer you that almost like their inability to speak occurs. If you've ever talked to somebody and asked them a question and they start to reply with things like, well, it's, it's sort of like, I feel it's not even, and they really struggle to coherently talk to you. This is when confusion sets in, and this is the unconscious mind, or this is the person going from a conscious state where finding language is very, very simple into more an unconscious state, which means they're feeling this trance or they're feeling the hypnosis starting to occur and they can't quite describe it. And that's just an example. Next one is thoughts. These can be irrational thoughts or non-conclusive thoughts. Irrational thoughts like, I can't do this in my life because this is occurring and that occurs and this occurs. And when you're listening to your client, it really doesn't make sense to you as the hypnotist. Or non-conclusive, like they've come to a point in their life or come to an understanding that they could not have an understanding of, or they're making conclusions that do not exist or cannot exist in the very place they're living in. Okay, so putting all these together, the auditory clues will happen more with the hypnotic interview, but there's still to keep an eye out when you're talking to your client, even if they're in an inductive state, if they're in trance, so to speak. This is the value of unconscious moments. If unconscious moments let us know that our induction has worked, or the very themes we're using are working, we now need to put this into place and put this into action. So let's give you another formal exercise to do. So again, if you've got the opportunity to grab a partner, we're going to use the priming induction you've done before and just include the hunt for these unconscious moments. Now, for the rest of this program, the rest of your career after this, or just the rest of the hobby that you use this for outside of this training program, we always want to be on the hunt for those unconscious moments. They give us so many valuable clues to the success of our session. Again, if we're seeing them, we're on the right track. If we're not seeing them, we need to adjust and be flexible accordingly. So what I would like you to do, I'm going to use Joe as my partner again. I'm going to do the very same thing with Joe. I'm going to ask Joe to sit down. I'm going to prime Joe. Now, while I'm priming Joe, I might play with my EVP a little bit. I'm going to use a bit of a volume change and do some pausing. When we get into the eye contact, we'll look at that later. I'm going to include that as well. Now, at the very start, as I start to prime Joe about how hypnosis is going to feel, what can be or what can happen as a result of him going into trance and what the outcome will be, I'm on the hunt for those unconscious moments. If I'm talking to Joe and not formally putting him into the induction because I'm not there yet, but I start to see his eyes starting to blink a lot, or I'm starting to see him relax from just hearing my priming sequence, or I see his posture starting to change, or I see his full attention on me, this lets me know that whatever I'm doing is stimulating the unconscious mind. I have his attention by talking to him, and if I'm seeing the unconscious moments, it must have meant that I've bypassed the conscious mind. Because how else could you see unconscious moments unless the unconscious mind is expressing them and the conscious mind is out of the way and allows those unconscious moments to surface? Think of the conscious mind as a lid on a jar. If you wanted to get the content out of the jar, you couldn't put your hand through the lid. You'd have to take off the lid, remove it, put it to the side, the lid being the conscious mind, and then you'd be able to get your hand into the jar and take out the content. Think of this as taking the lid off the mind, and once the lid's off, the unconscious moments, the expression of the unconscious mind, and this is pure unconscious expression, can float to the surface and come out of the jar. These things coming out of the jar are the unconscious moments. This is the unconscious mind letting me know that it's playing ball, it's alive, it's active, and I can start to interact with it accordingly. So again, I'll get Joe to close his eyes. I've done the priming. I've seen some little unconscious moments along the way. Then I get straight into my induction. Now, because Joe's eyes are closed, it doesn't take away the fact that I still need to be on the hunt for the unconscious moments. If my priming has worked, it means I've set up the trance bubble. So as soon as Joe goes into trance as a result of the induction, I know he's in a really good place. So I'm going to use my induction, and while I'm talking about how trance feels, what he's going to experience, how he needs to just relax and drift and feel his body getting heavy or feel his body getting light, I'm still watching for those unconscious moments. If they stop and I stop seeing them, it means my induction's not working. And all I need to do is just adjust accordingly. Now this is the key. I need to adjust spontaneously. I can't set up this accordingly and know it's going to happen every time. I need to take a couple of steps forward and adjust or collaborate. I need to adjust accordingly, either go left or right or under or over, so to speak. So I'm going to adjust my tone. I might pause longer to get more of his attention. I might change my volume. Just adjust anything we've done up to this point and see where it takes you. You might even have to use different themes. This way, increasing your vocabulary is so important. If all you're using are words like relax, drift, tranquil, and they're the only three that you keep repeating through your induction, and it's not having an effect of the unconscious mind, which means you're not seeing unconscious moments, you may need to use other themes that you've learned by expanding your vocabulary that will have more of an effect. But it's not to say those three words are useless, because they might be the three words your next client only likes, so you need to bring them back into place. We're not discarding anything, always expanding where we're becoming the hypnotist. We're learning to speak, talk, and act like a hypnotist. So I'm going to make those adjustments accordingly. So my goal right now as the hypnotist is not just to keep Joe safe. It's not just to look after him 100%. It's to be on the alert for unconscious moments. If I see them, keep doing exactly what you're doing. If I don't see them, make those adjustments. So please grab a partner if you can. Have this experiment with them and just write down after the session or take a mental note, how many unconscious moments did you see? The list that we created before, the list you created for yourself. Did you notice all of those at once? Did you notice only a certain few? What were more apparent? What were harder to see? Were they very obvious? Were they very, very quick? This is the unconscious moments in action. Sometimes they can last for a long time. Sometimes they can stand out like a sore thumb. They become very obvious. And sometimes they're very fleeting and quick. As long as you're staying on the hunt for unconscious moments, you'll do more as a hypnotist than the majority can do in the industry. We take out the assumption that to think that, well, if I've done the induction, because that's what I've been told to do, or that's what my instructions have told me to do, that they must be in hypnosis because that's what it says. Take out those assumptions. We need to see the unconscious mind in action. If we're not seeing it, it means we need to adjust accordingly. So, if you've had the experience with your partner, we can take it one step further. Again, we'll come back to the hypnotic interview later. Let's now move on and give you an experience of what it feels like to do something therapeutic. And this is just the very basics. We've got to stick with the basics right now. We need to look at therapeutically. We're going to look at one version. This is not the version. It's not the only version. It's a version of therapy. This is known as the hypnotic suggestion. Now, already you've already done this. You've done this through your priming sequence. You're suggesting things about the trance. You're suggesting things about looking after Joe through his trance. Then in your induction, you are suggesting themes about hypnotic trance, what it feels like so Joe would start to feel them. You're already using these suggestions. So when it comes to therapy, the great thing about a client being in an unconscious state is they're very suggestible. Means that we can offer ideas to our client to think about and for our clients to feel in shape of what is known as a therapeutic suggestion. Now, there are two therapeutic suggestions we can look at. We have a direct suggestion or an indirect suggestion. Right now, we're going to look at direct, which is just straightforward. You're going to tell your client what to think or what to feel as a matter of speaking. Then we'll look at more indirect stuff a little bit later on. But the direct suggestion becomes the easiest and more tangible place for us to be right now, just to give you an understanding, especially if you're your first time doing something therapeutic. Now, when your client is in trance, you've got to be very careful what we're saying. This does not mean that when your client's in trance, we can tell them to do anything we want them to do and they're automatically going to do it. It's not the case. Just like the conscious mind looks after the unconscious mind is extremely wise and it will know when you're taking advantage of it. Although it becomes that little puppy that we're playing with, it does not mean we can ask the puppy to do something we wouldn't want them to do and put the puppy in harm's way, because it will adjust accordingly. So with our suggestion, all I want you to write down with your bit of paper is what's a short statement you would like to tell either your volunteer that you're working with, might even be a friend or a family member, someone you really care about. What would be something nice you would like to tell them while they're in trance? Let's say, for example, I'm working with Joe, and Joe's a good friend of mine, so I do care for Joe. Now, Joe's got his eyes closed. I've done my priming. I've done my induction. I can see the unconscious moment starting to happen. So I know he's in hypnosis. Then I might say to Joe, I want you to take this time and do something remarkable with it for your life. That's it, Joe. Take the time and really think this through to do something remarkable with this time that will affect your life in the positive. That's it, Joe. Really take this time and find something positive from it that will affect your life in such a great way. So what have I done right there? I'm using repetition like we've done automatically, but I'm suggesting Joe to do something over and over again in a very positive term. I'm not saying to Joe, you need to do this, this, and this because I said so. I'm telling Joe to take this time he's in right now, as an example, take the trance he's in right now and do something with it. Feel a certain something, find something, see something in this trance that will affect your life positively. Now, what do you think is going to happen from this? Well, the unconscious mind will act accordingly if it likes the suggestion you've given it. Now, to know, well, how do I know what my client's unconscious mind wants to hear compared to what it doesn't want to hear? If you keep it positive, it'll more likely absorb the suggestion and do something with it. If you're mean and nasty, it'll automatically block the suggestion and your client will come out of trance. So keep it positive. The unconscious mind, the faculty of the unconscious mind is always working towards positivity, health, well-being, growing as a person, becoming a better person. It's always working on these things. So we're giving it a bit of a nudge. And we're saying to Joe, the trance you're in right now is a perfect opportunity to do something positive. Think of something. Find something that makes you feel good, Joe. Remember something that makes you feel good, Joe. And I'm going to use that suggestion. I'm not going to repeat it. So let's say I give myself 1 minute to do something therapeutically. I'm not just going to say it once and then let it sit there. I'm going to say it once, give maybe 3 to 5 seconds to absorb the suggestion, and then I'm going to repeat it again. And I might throw in some different pauses. Put more emphasis, more intent on the suggestion that I'm giving Joe. I want him to act accordingly to the suggestion. Give him another 3 to 5 second pause so he can absorb it. And then I'm going to repeat it again. Now, in that minute, I might be able to repeat it 10, 15, 20 times. I just want to keep repeating the same theme and the same idea over and over, but not just automatically like I'm getting bored with it. I want to include my EVP along the way. Because if I pause in different places, although I'm saying the same words, it almost becomes a different suggestion. Now try that for yourself. It'd be very interesting to see if that becomes a new suggestion for you. I'm going to put a lot of intent, a lot of care, a lot of emphasis in the words I want Joe to feel. Now again, how do I know if my therapy is taking place? Well, I'll probably see those unconscious moments. Let's say, for example, I've said to Joe, take this time and do something remarkable with Joe. Think of something that makes you feel so happy. I'll let Joe think about it and I'll repeat it again. And maybe the second, third, or fourth time, I see Joe starting to tear a little bit, like cries of joy, and he starts to smile and laugh. What's happened here is the therapy has taken place. The therapeutic suggestion has had a hold on Joe. Now, if you think back to the 4 ways the unconscious mind deals with information, law of association, so it allows repetition to create something. Maybe it came through as a symbol or came through as a memory. It's definitely come through as an unconscious moment. So let's say I've asked Joe to do a certain something or feel or remember something, and Joe automatically remembers a magnificent time he was with his family at a beach or a gathering or maybe Christmas time that he'd forgotten about. And that Joe starts to feel the memory. He starts to feel the experience. Or maybe he falls into the experience again and experiences all for a better time in the second way. Whatever Joe's feeling as a result, or noticing, or imagining even, from the suggestion that I've given him has allowed something therapeutic to take place and given Joe a pleasant sensation or a pleasant feeling. Now, this will come through, like we said, as an unconscious moment. This lets me know that what I've said has had a result. If Joe, however, is sitting there from my therapy suggestion and there's no unconscious moment, he hasn't smiled, he hasn't laughed, his shift of position hasn't moved, it looks like he's just sitting there in a nice place. It doesn't mean later on the therapy won't take place, but it just lets me know that, you know what, I'm going to say something different and see if I can get a result. Now, this will be a back and forward thing with your suggestions till you find the right suggestion for that client. So what I would like you to do is grab your training partner or grab your trance buddy, if you would, and I want you to try this on. Always keep in the positive. Always keep in the positive. Don't do anything negative. This is not evil hypnosis school. We want to keep them in a safe environment where they can learn and give them something remarkable. Look at this as giving them a hypnotic gift. Tell them something positive. Tell them this could do something for them in their life. Now, this is not to say if you're first time doing it, you're not saying things like you will overcome smoking now. You will overcome your addiction. You'll overcome this, that, or other, because that has other processes you need to put in place before you can look at how to treat big issues if they were. Right now, you're just practicing with something positive. Ask your client to remember something amazing, to feel a certain something that it fills them up with exciting feelings. Just something very positive, very tangible, and always be on the hunt for the unconscious moments. I cannot stress enough what unconscious moments do for us. Again, keep them simple. If you see them, whatever you're doing right now is working. If you're not seeing them, it means that what you've done or what you're doing right now is not having the effect that it can. You need to adjust accordingly. So that's your first therapeutic suggestion. Once you've given the suggestion to your client, you wake them up like so. Tell them to come out of trance or come back into the room. Then give them that thumbs up. Put a big smile on your face. Then ask them what happened when I gave you that suggestion. What came to mind? Was it a picture? Was it a symbol? Did you remember something? Did you feel something? And just get some feedback. This subtle feedback along the way helps you adjust as a hypnotist. It helps you become that hypnotist that you desire. If, however, they say, well, I didn't feel anything, I didn't notice anything, don't take it as a criticism. This is a training course. This course will require you to listen to it over and over and over again. We don't become a hypnotist overnight. It can take many, many, many years